Live from the apocalypse, welcome to State of the Game. This is the place. We take it fresh out of the oven, it's great to be here. So my name is Dano. I am humbly known as the Kenny Lattimore of this hip hop podcast game. That's who people always tell me. So, and my co-host here with me every week. If the high top fade were a person, it would be K Diggy. Okay, for being here, I appreciate you. We have the definitive guest for this topic.
Whoa!
Here,
all right,
talking about somebody who scratches on all of my favorite records,
oh,
all
wow.
of my favorite albums. Being a Wrecking Crew head, and just an encyclopedic knowledge of movies. When you're doing this, we had to have Marcus Pinn.
All right, thank you.
Put a pin in it. He's here.
Thank you. Shout out to Wrecking Crew. I just met. Speaking of in person for the first time, I met Castro and Premrock at a show last weekend for the first time. All the scratching I've done for those guys, I've never met any of them in person. So I still haven't met Zilla, still haven't met Alaska, although we talk all the time. But shout out to all those guys, man.
Yeah, I haven't met Zilla yet, but yeah, I saw Premrock and Castro. Like we saw them twice in a short span, right?
Oh, that's right. They did like a New England kind of leg of the tour. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, it was awesome, and Prem is one of the nicest people, and it was
absolutely
super cool. It was great. So appreciating it. We were talking about soundtracks, favorite soundtracks all time. I didn't want to limit it to anything because soundtracks are such a weird thing, and they've been such an interesting thing in my life for a long time. Kay, when I was in high school, I walked into my friend's room.
Okay.
He was alone in his room listening to the Jurassic Park soundtrack moment and Neil's dinosaur. Do. I'm like, dude, what's going on? Like, the Jurassic Park soundtrack. But I'm like, you just kick it, listen to the Jurassic Park soundtrack. It's weird. Yeah, so it was interesting.
There's a story that Kobe used to listen to the Halloween song before every game.
Of course he did. Of course he did. That makes so much sense.
That got
him in game mode.
That got him ready to go. Yeah. I mean, shout out to Kobe just hissing
Rest in peace.
Hissing at people, like during the game. Have you heard that story, Marcus? Rookies would go over to their teammates and be like, Kobe's hissing at me. Like,
wait, really?
Yeah, and they would be like, yeah, he does that. He calls himself the Black Mamba. He hisses at people.
Oh, he took it to wow. I have not ever heard that. The Halloween soundtrack I did hear, but the hissing at people, I never heard that. That's funny.
So when you put the two together, I think you get a really nice picture of who he was. But yeah, it was soundtracks are, and I have a weird whenever we talked about soundtracks and favorite soundtracks, my wife would laugh at me and be like, "I know yours," and she's like, "I know it's the Dead Presidents Volume 1 and 2." Wow. Dead Presidents Volume 1 and 2 is easily my most listened to soundtrack of all
time.
Really? Wow.
Easily.
Well, I mean, it's got some old school stuff on it. Okay, yeah.
It's basically a starter kit for anybody trying to get into soul music.
Perfectly put. I agree. And it's so funny. I was just thinking, because it's like, this is before any of our time. Like, soundtracks were just treated like they were just like regular albums. There was certain album, like whether it's Sweetback or Superfly, stuff like that. It was just such a common thing that it almost had its own life from the movie that it was associated with.
Yep.
So that's interesting, because a lot of that music, some of that music's on the Dead President soundtrack.
And I mean, Volume 2 especially, when you start to get into the Intruders, Cowboys to Girls, The Undisputed Truth, Smiling Faces. Yeah, they really got it covered a lot.
Yeah.
The bases there. Yeah.
The volumed soundtrack is something that kind of faded away because it just reminds me of I got it on my phone right now. New Jersey Drive, Volume 1 and 2. That's another. There's so many like, I mean, obviously, like that's the soundtrack that introduced like Total to the world, and it's got its like. There's so much stuff on it that you forget. There's like other stuff, like that Keith Murray song is so good. But because I think a lot of people think Total or Outkast, Benz or Beamer, or what are some of the other big ones? But yeah, but then there's so much other stuff on that soundtrack that's like, oh my god.
Yeah, Queen Latifah, Jersey, MC8,
Yeah,
ain't
of
nothing
course.
but killing.
Yeah,
that's such an MC8 song. Benz or Beamer, yeah. It's and Volume 2. What is on Volume 2? I didn't. Okay,
oh my gosh, what am I talking about? Heads Ain't Ready.
Heads Ain't Ready.
Boot
Oh
camp.
my
Yeah,
god.
yeah, yeah. Oh my
Boot
god. Yeah.
camp clip. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Premiere Invasion with J. Rue.
Oh,
yeah.
There you go. That came out before Wrath of the Math came out. That was like the first song from that album that was out.
Hey, have you seen New Jersey Drive?
No.
I would nominate New Jersey Drive as the most depressing of the hood movies.
Yeah, it is.
Drive.
Oh, you should see it. I was about to give away a really big part of the movie. Let me not say anything, but
it's one of the. I mean,
there was also a lot of controversy when that movie came out because like Sharp James, who was the mayor of New Jersey for a very long time, he didn't want that movie shown in any movie theaters in New Jersey because it just depicted negativity. Because at the time, New Jersey was the carjack capital of America. Like it was kind of like a real thing. And it wasn't just Sharp James. It was actually a lot of folks like the kind of like, black leader, black activist folk were really like protesting that movie had, not come out. But it was such a hip hop, like there's a great Heavy D cameo in it. It's such a like hip hop thing that like the younger kids, if anything, it just made me want to see it more. When people are like, this movie should be banned, it's like 13, 14-year-old me is like, oh, well, now I want to see it.
Right. I'm in. Yeah. But I didn't see it at the time. I saw it later as a grown up, and I was like, this is the saddest thing I've ever seen.
It is. There's like there's a handful, 2 scenes specifically that are really like, oh my god. Yeah, that's a good point.
And that's weird because there were so many of those movies of that period are crushingly depressing.
Yeah, they are. Yep.
Juice is the story of a friend systematically killing the rest of his friends. Like
literally, yeah.
That is wild. That was a movie we went to see that back in the day. But it was, that's
that I gotta say, also, I mean, at the time, I even, in '92, I wasn't even thinking about being a DJ. I just loved hip hop, but kind of false advertising because when that trailer came out, there was so much DJ stuff in that less than 2-minute trailer, and then you see the movie. It's like, okay, the guy is a DJ. There's a DJ battle scene.
Yeah,
he used it. There's authentic DJs in the movie, but there's the scene of him practicing. There's the one DJ battle, and that's it. Like, there's not much else. I remember things like, oh, but I still liked it because you want to talk about hip hop cameos. It's like that and Who's the Man probably have like,
oh man,
the biggest like hip hop cameo, count there is. So
yep. So that's awesome. So Kay, when did you first start thinking about soundtracks or listening to soundtracks or mixing them into your listening?
I mean, for me, I think the big soundtrack for my generation would probably be the Space Jam soundtrack.
Oh, that's good.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah, I mean that was the watershed. That was probably the first. That was the first soundtrack I bought as a kid.
Yep.
I mean,
I was trying to think for me, like, obviously I'm very old and my dad had thousands of CDs. So
nice.
I grew up, and I also grew up watching blaxploitation films and soundtracks. So like the Superfly soundtrack is the best quality soundtrack, in my opinion, that ever happened. Right.
Sure.
And I mean, that thing is embedded in me, right? Like
it really sonically does sound great, which is funny because at this point, I don't think there's any argument that the movie itself is legendary and classic in its own way, its own lane. But you can see, and this is not a slight on the movie, but the budget in some scenes in Superfly, but the soundtrack kind of eclipses that. It's just like great recording, great sound, but the movie looks a little grainy in parts. It looks a little, like
I kind of love that about the movie, because if you watch the movie now and it's like a super cool scene where Superfly is getting out of a cool car and crossing the street, like he's getting out of a cool car in an obviously busy street that they just did not clear out, right?
Sure,
this is not actors, and he's like zipping his fly as he's going through there, like it's just, it has a weird like charm to it. And Shaft is the same way. Shaft has that same kind of charm to it.
Yeah, and walking down the street and everything. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's funny, speaking of all those movies, I watched, this was, I guess it was like fall of last year. Criterion highlighted Original Gangsters on their channel. Which is like, it was like the all-star kind of, because it's interesting, because the selling point was, okay, we got Jim Brown, Fred the Hammer Williamson, and Pam Grier, but Richard Roundtree also shows up. Ron O'Neal also shows up. You know what I'm saying? I only wish, from what I understand, by that point, Jim Kelly was just done with movies. He just kind of, at the end of the day, wasn't happy with his experience, so that's why he didn't show up. Would have been nice to see Clarence Williams, because he was also in Three the Hard Way and stuff like that. But still, it had such a great, Drew Down shows up.
Drew Down is in it. That's awesome.
Shaheem, the rugged child, shows up. You know what I mean? Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, Jim Brown, Pam Grier, Richard Roundtree, Fred Williamson. Yeah, that's awesome.
Good soundtrack too. There's a great Mobb Deep song on that soundtrack. I don't remember the rest of it, but I do remember the Mobb Deep song from that soundtrack.
Yep. I identified two big holes in my listening experience, Kay. I'm going to try and remedy these this week. I got some time coming.
Okay.
I have not seen Love and Basketball.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah,
and I haven't seen Set It Off.
Oh wow. Okay. Watch Set It Off first, and then follow it up with Love and Basketball. If I could give my suggestion. You want to end off happy.
Yeah, fair. Set It Off is the one that my wife is more interested in.
Sure.
She's like, I would watch that. Love and Basketball, I think she's not informed. Because I think it seems like more of a pure romance than a romantic comedy, which is
no, there's no comedy. It's not really a comedy.
Yeah, it's not at all. It's funny. Have you seen the movie Widows? It came out a couple years ago.
No.
It's fun. I can't take that movie serious now, because I saw a tweet where somebody called Widows the gentrified Set It Off.
Oh,
and I can't take that movie seriously now. It was such a funny, and I respect Widows. I love Steve McQueen's a great filmmaker, but it's such a it was such a punch to the chest, because it was like, oh, Widows is cool, and then someone described it as such, and now I felt a little embarrassed liking it. I was like, damn, that is kind of true.
Sometimes that critique will stick in you, and you just can't shake it. It takes a while to shake it. I remember when I read, there was somebody on the internet who said Rico Nasty raps like the angry parent of a fourth grader yelling at their teacher.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
And I was just like, it took me a while to shake that. I was just like, whenever I heard Rico, I'd be like, oh my God.
I still can't get past the that famous J. Cole bit where it's like, because I'm a J. Cole fan, but when someone's like, J. Cole makes music for people that film themselves giving money to homeless people, I was like, oh my God, that's so harsh. But it's like, I'm a fan, but it's like, it's like when one of your boys gets roasted by someone who's not one of your boys, and you're just kind of like, oh, damn. You know what I mean?
Well, the kind of person J. Cole is, and so me and the person who founded Free Music Empire, Derek, we were going to shows, and this was right when that wave had dropped, right? Kendrick came out, J. Cole came out, Like all
Yeah.
this people. So this ticket is Big Crit is opening for J. Cole.
Oh, that was the era. What was that? 2011, 2012?
So we're in. We're like, oh, this is gonna be dope.
That was the era. Wow. Yeah.
And by the way, Big Crit tears it down. Big Crit's
I'm sure
awesome.
I've always wanted to see him live. I've never seen him live. I would love to see
And then
that.
J. Cole comes out and he's got his like sexy phone voice going.
Oh,
You know what I mean? To the
yeah,
crowd.
yeah,
And, hey, and like
yeah.
he telling us life lessons and stuff. And then he sits on the stool and is just like rapping from the stool for like rest of we just left. We're like, nah, dude, I'm not gonna rap
That's
to the
hilarious.
stool, man. I'm out of here.
Sure.
So we bounced. But no, it's soundtracks. The other soundtrack I was thinking of that was a big part of my childhood. It's one of those. It would, we were talking about this, Kay, before you came on, about people being black famous, right? And how there was a whole set of movies that were just black movies, right?
Yes.
Friday was one of the movies that everybody knew.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a hood movie. Everybody knew. Everybody. Yes. People that were struggling to understand racism were still fucking with Friday.
That's very true. Well, because at the end of the day, Ice Cube is such a big name, and weed is such a unifier of so many different people.
Yeah.
I mean, I think of high school, man. It's like, the stoner kids knew the skater kids. They knew a lot of the jocks were into weed, and like just the kind of like the kids in high school who were just there, they were into weed. Like so many different cliques. It's funny. My high school experience, I connected to Dazed and Confused. I mean, completely different eras.
That makes sense.
The fact that like there were so many different cliques, but at least 1 to 2 people in every single clique was friends with another 1 to 2 people in every single clique. So it wasn't as segregated as you would think. You know what I mean? So yeah.
No, that's real. And that was Dazed and Confused kicked off an era of movies where like stuff didn't really have to happen anymore.
Oh yeah. Well, Linklater kind of, I mean, obviously they've been since the beginning of time, but Linklater was a guy that definitely popularized that before Dazed and Confused. His film Slacker was, it was one of the, before Clerks, it was, one of the list of films that kicked off that indie 90s scene where it's just like, oh, a day in the life of Generation X Austin, you know what I mean? Just going from person to person kind of thing, which is a movie. I still love that movie very much.
But yeah, so the Friday soundtrack was bananas, right? Yeah. Keep Their Heads Ringing with Dr. Dre. Let an African American Gentleman Know by Threat. I love that song.
And that started that kicked off the Cypress Hill Ice Cube beef.
Oh,
that soundtrack.
Yep, that's true because he lifted the Friday hook from a song they showed him from Devils of Bleeding Through. Yeah.
And then, in my personal opinion, I think it wasn't so much Ice Cube won the beef. Cypress Hill beat themselves because it's like the song where they diss Ice Cube. I don't know what kind of language we can use on here, but it's just but like the song, the whole theme of the song is Ice Cube giving Cypress Hill fellatio. Yeah. But it's kind of like, are you in a beef with Ice Cube or do you have a crush on him? Because like as the song progresses, it gets way more uncomfortable because there's in between the song starts and in between the verses is like slurping, and it's just kind of like, are you mad at Ice Cube or are you in love with him? Because this is really uncomfortable. I don't like. I think this is one of the most. It's probably the most uncomfortable hip hop diss start to finish. It's very uncomfortable and accidentally. It's very romantic, but I don't think they meant it to be romantic.
No, there was a lot of that in the 90s of like, I hate you, you should suck my dick, and it's like,
or speaking of soundtracks, because that was a personal favorite of mine, on Menace to Society, this is when Everlast and DJ Quick had beef, and DJ Quick is literally talking about making love to Everlast, and it's kind of like, wait a minute, is this what beef is now? Like, do you have? I mean, it's fine if that's how you feel, but I thought you hate him.
Yeah. No, that's. Yeah, Quick was on a different time.
And I remember that this was pre-internet, so sometimes when people had beef, or even like hip hop journalism wasn't as readily available. So when there was beef in rap music, especially in 92, 93, it's like, wait a minute, how did whoa, like a song would just come out and it would be a diss. And it's like, damn, how did this even start? I remember, you know, you just listening to, by the way, Menace to Society is phenomenal, phenomenal soundtrack. And then DJ Quick song, and like right out the gate, the first verse, the first line, the first whole verse, he's just going at Everlast. And it's like, damn, what the hell happened? How did these two even meet? Like, what is the problem? I remember
Well,
that.
and didn't Mr. Cheeks and the Lost Boys also go it? Oh, with that was Marky Mark. That was Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch. Yeah,
At
yeah, yeah.
what?
The Lost Boys dissed Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch.
Really?
Yeah,
When was
yeah.
this?
That was during their peak. It was absolutely right during that.
Wow. I do not remember. Oh,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
thought they would have missed each other.
It's very. It was like, and it just what you said reminded me of it because it felt like they picked people out of a hat to just dislike. You know,
Sure.
it's
Yeah.
like yelling at people they saw on the TV. You
Right.
know,
Exactly. No, exactly. Yeah.
it's like I don't like that shit. I'm like, yeah, none of us do. We're just
I
gonna
mean,
let.
that's how some of it was. It was a combination of that and hey, I want attention. I need to get on, so let me diss this person like that. I mean, a lot of early beefs were that, or it would just be like I always thought this is early. I always thought the MC Shan LL Cool J beef was funny because it was like MC Shan thought that like LL Cool J was dressing like him, and it's just like I don't know, man. I feel like there's probably thousands of people in Queens alone that dress like the both of you guys. Like, come
Yeah,
on.
yeah. No, there was like
Yeah.
the one I use as an example to explain rap beef back then is Bone Thugs versus 3 6 Mafia.
Oh, sure.
Because like that was all just based on people within their circles, respective circles, telling them that the other group sounded like them,
Yeah.
and neither of the groups had really heard the other group.
Right.
And the time they fully engaged with each other's music, they're like they had already threatened each other's lives and like gone.
Right. Yeah.
We're like, oh, these people don't sound like us. That's
Right.
totally, like, there was no internet to like, clarify,
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just different times. But no, the Friday soundtrack was huge, and it sets a precedent, I think. Okay, in the '90s, whenever a character started smoking weed, Cypress Hill queued up.
That's true.
He queued up a Cypress Hill song. You pull up all your favorite '90s rap soundtracks; they've all got one Cypress Hill song.
That's true.
And it's about torn up.
Yeah. Although it's funny, another kind of like needle drop prescient Cypress Hill moment is there's not a weed moment in Juice, but just as Tupac is on his way to go shoot someone, the "Shoot 'Em Up" song
That's
plays.
right. Yes.
Yeah, just when I have if you have certain friends, especially I was 11 when that movie came out, so I was like, where like there's certain friends I have in my phone where you could just text to someone like to my wife or to my mother-in-law, just someone, it would just be, it's just a random sentence, but exactly, like a buddy of mine, he'll just text me, Raheem is dead, somebody shot him, like that. There's no context to it, but that's, or like I'll just be like, we didn't say that you killed him, we said that you regularly harassed Mr. Quiles, that's what we said. Like I'll just text that. There's friends I have, I could just text random Juice quotes to people.
That's awesome. No, and then in that moment when he's walking through the party, Omar Epps, and like
how I could just get, oh my God, that too, Jesus, yeah,
walking through the party and looking for Pac, and the Cypress Hill "Shoot 'Em Up" song comes on.
Yeah,
like feel that it's almost like the Goodfellas moment where Hendrix starts playing and he's like sizing the guy up to murder him.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. Those moments stick with you. Yeah.
Which Juice is so classic. God, like that soundtrack is so great. And not for nothing, there's some good R&B songs on that soundtrack. You got Aaron Hall's "Don't Be Afraid," which is great. Raheem, "Does Your Man Know About Me?" Like there's some really good like kind of slow jammy or R&B type songs. I think obviously that song is so associated with rap, but there's some good non-rap songs on that soundtrack too.
We should talk about that as well. Just how weird 90s soundtracks are so weird, Kay. Pull up the Above the Rim soundtrack.
That's on my list,
Oh.
actually. Yeah.
So it starts with SWV,
Yeah.
Sweet Sable, and then H-Town,
Yeah.
and then goes to Big Pimpin' with the Dog Pound, Second to None, DJ Quick. Like we get Warren G and
Oh, of course.
and like it's so interesting. Like Hoochie Speed Love too feeds into I'll Be Sure. I'm still in love with you.
Yeah.
It's R&B and hip hop were like invisibly divided back then.
You think? I always thought it was like went hand in hand, especially because the whole New Jack Swing era kicked off dated. Because New Jack Swing, yeah, it was singing and R&B, but they borrowed so much from hip hop. I thought it was kind of hand in hand.
I just think here's how I would frame it. Do you remember that period of time when it was Red Sox versus Yankees, but the players on the Red Sox and Yankees liked each other just fine?
Sure. Fair enough.
That's kind funny. Of how it felt to me, where like hip hop fans pretended that R&B was soft. You know?
Well, that's true. That for some reason, in like the early '90s, there was this era like R&B is whack. Yeah, like Lords of the Underground, EPMD, Onyx. There was so many like random strays. Like we don't listen to R&B stuff. And I was like, damn, I think it was okay. R&B's fine. Like, what are you so mad for? Yeah.
Right. So there was like that invisible beef, but at the end of the day, Wu-Tang on the tour bus, you know, singing soul music together. Like they were not
absolutely.
You know, they were listening to that shit anyway.
Well, I mean, so many of the great samples came from the music genre that you're dissing, which is also kind of funny. But hey, you know.
But yeah, it was different. So Above the Rim soundtrack is really interesting because of that. It's like the biggest 1-for-1 mix of just like Devontae swing, you know, and like all these, you know, it was Sweet Sable really blew me. I was like, wow, I forgot about this song.
Yeah, I mean, from what I'm reading, it was executive produced by Suge Knight, released by Death Row and Interscope, and Dr. Dre acted supervising producer on the project.
Was he? I didn't. Wow, maybe I knew that, you know, in the 7th grade and just forgot all these. I had no idea. I guess it had a Death Row related undertone, you know what I'm saying? But I guess it all makes sense now. I did not know that, or maybe I forgot. Wow. My favorite Tupac song is on that soundtrack, Pain.
Oh, Pain. I thought it was
for some. No, for such a when I tell people that, it's like no one thinks it's a whack song. I mean, it's a great song, but it's just I don't know. There's something about it's also like you could hear the SP1200 grit in the beat, lyrics. It's just a really great. Yeah, it's like a personal song. Yeah, it's really good. Yeah, I like it. Well, love it, rather. That's my favorite Tupac song.
Right. No, well, and the thing for me about that soundtrack, when I think of Above the Rim and Murder Was the Case as a soundtrack, what I think about, and this is something that I'm not sure everybody knows, the Dog Pound were the most complete unit going, right? So like people think of Death Row. Death Row was a juggernaut, you know? They think of Tupac. Tupac came over near the end. Like Tupac was not there at the beginning. Like when you think of the Dog Pound and you think of Snoop, Nate Dogg, Corrupt, Daz, that was a very complete unit. And if you listen to songs like Big Pimpin', my favorite of these soundtrack Dog Pound songs is on Murder Was the Case. It's What Would You Do?
Oh, wow. I remember that song very well.
What Would You Do is the most Dog Pound thing I can even think of. Like the hook being, what would you do if you could fuck with me and my group? But you can't. So don't even think about it. You know, like it's just like such a hilarious reversal. They were so funny and witty, cool. They, you know, to a kid back, they were just the coolest.
Sure.
Yeah.
I try to explain to people too, because I mean, we all grew up in New England, that like hip hop wise, I get it. Proximity, we are on the East Coast and closer to New York, obviously, than other places. But I remember listening to everything hip hop wise growing up. It wasn't like, I guess when the dust settles, yeah, I guess I predominantly listened to New York and New Jersey centric hip hop, but still, like I was listening to Spice One just as much as I was listening to Boogie Monsters and Above the Law. Like it's weird. I think history's been rewritten a little bit because sometimes I guess you shouldn't go off of hip hop Twitter because they rewrite history every day. But you hear people like, we weren't listening to Ghetto Boys over on the East Coast back then. It's like, what are you talking about? Yes, we were. You know what I mean? Like, because the new way to win an argument on hip hop Twitter is to be like, I was there. And it's like, one, no, you weren't, based on what you said. But two, it's like, okay, I don't even know how to respond to, like, I was there. All right.
Yeah,
okay.
where were you? Well, what are you talking about?
Right. You were in the studio. You went to every show. You listened to every radio station. That whatever.
No, and like I would say the Dog Pound were maybe anti-Onyx, like the opposite wavelength of Onyx.
Well, it's not just those two. It's just the music, period. Like,
right.
Look, it's lived most of my life between New York City and Massachusetts. It's cold here. It's crowded. It's tight. It's easy to get agitated. Whereas out in California, which I spent plenty of time, California's spread out. The weather is much different. It's just like, not that there aren't things to be stressed about, but environment wise, it's like just, I always take it like, imagine the average person has a job. You're either driving home in traffic or you're taking the subway or some crowded ass bus. Whereas in California, I get it, there's traffic, but the sun is still out. It's not like 4:59 and it's pitch black. Out in the West Coast, you got palm trees and all this stuff, you know what I'm saying? Just the vibe is different. So, and that definitely affects the music, you know what I mean? So
yeah, and it was, and you're absolutely right, because like I know a lot of people who thought Cypress Hill was from the East Coast.
Well, and strangely, technically, DJ Muggs was born in Queens, which is an interesting fact. But yeah, I remember thinking that
because
too.
it was.
But they had that Bomb Squad sound.
Yeah.
They sounded like the Bomb Squad early. Muggs had that Bomb Squad sound.
Yep, absolutely. And so, but yeah, the weather is a huge thing. Also, California, historically, musically, was very grounded within funk, like confunction.
1,000%.
And that music, that was just a different swagger, right?
That's why I think that's why EPMD crossed over so well in the West Coast, because they were sampling, Roger Troutman and Zapp and all that stuff. So that's why the West Coast, oh, these guys are from New York, not New York City. They're from Long Island, but still, it's like, oh man, these guys are from over there. This is great. You know what I mean? I always feel bad for the other regions when people list their favorite winter hip hop albums, because it's literally nothing but New York City, New York. Cannibal Ox, Jizza, Mobb Deep, Hell on Earth. It's all New York stuff, but it's like, I mean, winter means something, to us over here, not so much on the West Coast,
Yeah, no one's got like Devin the Dude self-titled.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Although I don't know, on a snow day, I mean, I wasn't in school by the time he came out, but I could throw some Devin the Dude on a snow day when school would be canceled. It's like, oh, I got nothing to do, so yeah.
No, it's
but still.
Yeah, it was interesting, and I think they were such a complete unit with Nate Dogg killing the hooks, with with Snoop as great as he was, and and I'm a huge Tupac person. I'm a believer with Tupac, but to clarify, Tupac was just not as good a leader of his people as Snoop was, and I'll tell you why.
Interesting. Oh wow.
So the Outlaws were great. There was talent there.
Oh, I already see where you're going.
But and Thug Life, I love Thug Life. I love that album.
Oh, you're being really nice. It's like a joke. Nobody likes the Tupac affiliated people.
I love the Thug Life albums. I love.
Oh, fair enough. Okay.
Big Sugar, whatever. But the thing is, Tupac was one of those people. Honestly, like 50 years or like Jeezy was with CTE, you're gonna stand behind me. You're not gonna get it, right?
Yeah, fair enough. That's true.
You can never be at my level. If you're in my crew, you're behind me. Snoop had no compunction on that. He was like,
that's a very good point.
Comfortable with people being like, Corrupt is the best lyricist of the crew. Snoop was like, whatever you want, man. That's cool.
That's a very good point. Wow. That's a really good point.
he was out there letting people breathe and grow, and that's why Daz became such a great producer. And Corrupt got the notoriety he got, and Nate Dogg is loved as the way he's loved. All those people are loved individually because Snoop was able.
And that's I know all this time I've never thought about that. It's a very good point.
So that was it's one unit, and I think the other one is, and it's still present on the Above the Rim, is the Quick's crew, Second to None, High C, Sugar Free. Those guys were just bananas and very, very cool.
Interesting. That's funny. Speaking of, we could go to another really cool soundtrack because you brought up High C, the CB4 soundtrack, because Phil's, he was MC Gusto, the voice of the rapping MC Gusto. CB4. Yeah. And Daddy O was Dead Mike. Daddy O from Stetsasonic. But CB4 was another great soundtrack. Even the songs that were made for the soundtrack, like the CB4 songs, I didn't mind those. Straight Outta Low Cash, Sweat From My Balls. Those I remember as a kid. Those are pretty funny songs.
Yeah, Black Cop is on there.
Yeah, KRS. Oh, that's right. Oh my God, there you go. Yeah.
I mean, that's
what's it called? I think wasn't MC Ren's Mayday on the Front Line, was that on? That was a great. I love that song. Yeah.
Yep. No, I never saw CB4, but
wait, at all, or
I still haven't seen it.
Oh wow.
But I have seen Fear of a Black Hat a million times.
Oh yeah, those are I felt bad for Fear of a Black Hat. Reminded me, I'm gonna get a little. Well, it's not too movie nerdy, but around the time Existence came out, The Matrix came out, and it got so eclipsed because Existence was the same thing. It was like you plug in through your body to this alternate reality, and what's real, what's not, and it's kind of like I think The Matrix took a lot of the shine from Existence, which I think is a far superior movie. Shout out to David Cronenberg.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah. Before I forget to, another great Tupac related soundtrack that I loved growing up too is Poetic Justice, which is another great like hip hop, R&B, and reggae. There's a great, the Shaka Demus and Pliers song, I Want to Be Your Man, is such a great song. The Warren G produced it. This was like his first major credit, the Tupac song, the Definition of a Thug. Which Warren G produced. That was like his first major placement as a producer. There's some really good stuff on the Above the Rim soundtrack also.
Well, and this is one of the things I was thinking about was like if you did an elevator pitch on the movies we loved as kids, they don't make sense. Like you were like, so it's gonna be great. Tupac and Janet Jackson are in a van arguing.
Yeah, right. You're right.
Really?
Actually, that is a really good elevator pitch.
It's so weird. So many of our movies are so weird, but Poetic Justice was such a momentous film.
And
that was
yeah. Oh no, go ahead, please.
No, we should. It bridges the thing to me thought wise, okay, about the kind of romantic movies that we had.
Oh yeah.
Back then, what was the one that I love? Obviously, is Love Jones, right?
Love Jones. Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
And the
great soundtrack.
Yeah, absolutely.
A movie that I just lived and died by, and I was like re-listening to the soundtrack and put me right back in it. And I was like, how much of a nerd was I? When did that come out? 95?
95. Yeah. 95, yeah.
I'm 15 years old, just totally engulfed in this spoken word love story. Like I was just such a weirdly romantic little teenager.
Right.
But yes, it was an incredible movie, and it's a beautiful soundtrack. Maxwell, Wilson, Kenny Lattimore, just beautiful. Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was because that was one of my dad's favorite movies at the time, and I listened. It's funny, growing up. Like I listened to the Love Jones soundtrack because of my father, but I didn't watch the movie. I didn't get around to watching the movie till about 2 or 3 years ago. But that soundtrack was, my dad would play that all the time.
Nice.
Wow.
That's awesome.
That's really cool. That's a great point of like, that's how these movies live with us. The other thing that I remember about, this is one of the things I remember most about Love Jones is, and maybe this is a sad thing to remember, but it was totally eclipsed by the movie Booty Call.
Was it? I thought Booty Call was like a couple years later. Was it?
An interview where Nia Long was like, you know, Booty Call killed us at the box office.
Wow,
like,
I guess I'm off a few years.
97, yeah.
And like, that sucks because we're trying to make movies about Black love. We're trying to make movies that like with dignified characters, and these dudes are at the convenience store. You know, you've got to, you know,
you got to lick it before you stick it. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. I mean, I always find that funny that Spike Lee at the time was super vocal about his hatred of that movie, but then he would like go on to direct Tommy Davidson and quite possibly his greatest acting performance ever in Bamboozled. It's when he's done that a few times, man. He's he's crapped on the Wayans brothers more than once, but then he worked with Damon Wayans on Bamboozled. Like, you know, I mean, Spike Lee never really holds his tongue.
No, he's a shit talker.
Yeah, sometimes he should. Sometimes he should. But
he's a shit talker.
You know,
he made Kay's favorite movie, She Hate Me. So
no, that is not.
Wait, I was gonna say, really? Oh, wow. That movie, it's like three movies in one, man. There's a lot going on in that movie.
You could not let that shit slide. You're like, no.
Not my favorite movie. No.
Yeah. Although I will say, as far as hated Spike Lee movies goes, man, The Sweet Blood of Jesus is actually very good. I'm a big defender of that movie. When it came out, they did a couple of screenings, and like every critic who saw like the initial screening just hated it. So it was dead out of the gate. But yeah, it's a loose remake of Ganja and Hess, the vampire blaxploitation film. Well, it's not really a blaxploitation film, but it's very good. It's very underrated.
But it's interesting because speaking of Spike Lee, what I will say is, and the point I did, like growing up, you know, the soundtracks that I grew up listening to it was obviously my dad's music, but the soundtracks that I remember vividly were all like Spike Lee soundtracks.
Sure.
Like Mo Better Blues.
Better Blues is a good one.
Do the Right Thing soundtrack, and then the Jungle Fever soundtrack was really
Stevie
good.
Wonder. Yeah. You know, it was another good one. I remember as a kid, I bought it just because, remember the main song from the Malcolm X soundtrack was Arrested Development Revolution, which was such a dope song. But then the rest of the soundtrack was just like, oh, I'm not really into this. I remember that too, like buying a soundtrack for like the one song. Yeah. And the rest of the soundtrack isn't very good.
Yeah. No, that happens.
Thank God for iTunes now.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you can just grab and go. Because back then you had to dump like $14 on a CD.
Sure.
And then if you got one or two songs out of it, you were mad. You were like, this sucks. You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Man, what, you know, it's funny. I to go back to like the first soundtrack that I ever bought, and like my first soundtrack memory, I think was Judgment Night. And it's funny because being a soundtrack aside, that album, I have so many like personal nostalgic memories with that soundtrack, the movie, the fact that it was big in my town because I'm from a small town. We don't have a lot of famous people, but a band from my town has a song on that soundtrack, Dinosaur Jr. And it was the first tape that my dad ever let me buy that had parental advisory on it. Like, my dad was slow into letting me listen to rap music. And then the biggest gateway drug was like anything that was pro-Black or Afrocentric. My dad was like, all right, fine. Like he didn't even hear, he was just like, the group's called Brand Nubian, X-Clan. All right, fine. Or like he would see the cover to The Low End Theory and he was like, oh, this red, black, and green. All right, fair enough. Go ahead. Like that's just was his thing. And then I was trying to convince him of like, oh, that's what it was. I went to the movies to see the movie Judgment Night. And then my rationale, my 12-year-old self, I was like, I saw the movie, people get killed and all this stuff. It's like, why can't I listen to the music? And he was like, that's a good point. Fair enough. You can, okay, go ahead. Buy it. I mean, it's your money. And then, years later, I worked at a record store in town that Jay Mascis, the lead singer, lead guitarist of Dinosaur Jr., he used to frequent all the time. And for those who don't, I mean, he's a guitar virtuoso, but he's also known for just not speaking a lot. He just mumbles and keeps to himself. So I used to ring him up all the time. And then one day it was like slow. He came in, and again, small town. So anytime he's somewhere, people, oh, it's it's him. Even though he's literally born and he's never lived anywhere else. All the places he's been over, he's always lived in Amherst. Funny enough, the most Amherst story is his current house is Uma Thurman's dad's old house. So like that's the most Amherst that one could get.
That's awesome.
But one day I was ringing him up and I had to build up this courage. I was like, hey man, what's Del the Funky Homo Sapien like? Because I love, and because they have that song together. And then he was just like, oh, he's a pretty cool guy, like just because that's just how he is. And I kept asking him questions, but then like he eventually, I didn't fully let his guard down, but he was talking about the recording process, and he was like, yeah, he did a lot of drugs while we were recording, and like he was just so matter of fact the way he speaks, and I was like, oh, Jay Mascis is talking to me. So I thought that was cool.
That's really cool. That's really cool.
Yeah. But then the sound, man, that reads like a who's who, like a De La Soul, and it was such a it's funny because for those that don't know, the theme of that, it was like a hip hop group and a rock group collaborate and make it, which is funny because I don't understand what that had to do with the movie at all. But I'm not complaining because but I just remember, just the hip hop selection alone was because it's like Booyah Tribe and Sir Mix-a-Lot, De La Soul and Onyx, Del. There's no rhyme or reason.
We should go through the sound, the actual, like we got to go through beat by beat because yes, this is the only soundtrack that ever did any shit like that.
Yeah, at the time, I guess.
And I mean, it's the first song is Just Another Victim with Helmet and House of Pain.
Yeah.
Then you get one of my favorite De La Soul songs, Fallen.
Fan Club.
Fan Club. And Me, Myself, and My Microphone, Living Color, and Run DMC.
Oh, that's right. Damn, I forgot all about that. Yeah.
And Biohazard and Onyx on Judgment Night.
Yeah.
Slayer and Ice-T.
Yeah.
Order, which is kind of a mix of 3 songs.
Yeah.
Faith No More and Booyah Tribe, another body burden. I Love You, Mary Jane, Sonic Youth.
Favorite song on the soundtrack. My favorite song on the
soundtrack. Freak Mama by Mudhoney and Sir Mix-a-Lot.
Yeah. Hey, I'd say right now, Sir Mix-a-Lot is floating on that beat. Like he really like Sir Mix-a-Lot had like 3 different flows, and on that, like his fast rap style, he killed it. That first verse, he goes off. But.
Dinosaur Jr. and Del, Missing Link.
Yeah.
Therapy and Fatal with a song that is called Come and Die.
Yeah.
Can't beat that. And then we get Pearl Jam and Cypress Hill with Real Thing, which I don't know, to me, that's kind of the least interesting song.
It is.
But it was full of things like Faith No More and the Booyah Tribe coming together. Like you were just like, what is this?
But knowing what you know about Mike Patton, it actually does make sense now with all the things he's. I mean, back then it's like, huh, what? But like knowing what I know about Mike Patton, it's like he seems like he'll collaborate with anybody, any style of music whatsoever. So it does kind of make sense.
No, but then so in the breakdown, I mentioned some of the soundtracks that I felt totally eclipsed the movie. Right.
This is the prime example of that.
Judgment Night is a big one. But usually it's like kind of one artist who really curated a soundtrack that's just way more important than the movie. Like people talk about Purple Rain, but let's talk about Parade. Like the Parade soundtrack is crazy.
Parade? What why am I drawing a blank?
Prince, Under the Cherry Moon, and all that.
Oh, duh. Yeah, right. Yeah.
So Boys and Girls, all that stuff.
Yes.
Parade soundtrack is bonkers. It is awesome.
Yeah.
It's a mandatory Prince list. And the other one is when I was going through my Tom Petty phase was She's the One, because that movie doesn't matter at all. And he put everything. That is some of his most daring, weird music.
Is that Edward Burns?
Yes, yes.
Right. That. Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah, the story is that Burns came to him and said, "Hey, would you give me a song?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'll do the whole soundtrack."
Wow.
And he was
Easy
like,
enough.
"Yeah, okay."
Yeah.
You know, this was like at a time where this is 1996. Tom Petty is
Yeah.
printing his own money at this.
Right. Right.
So, yeah, maybe yeah. So that was wild. Yeah.
I like stories like that because it's similar to what's it called? It's similar to like Jim Jarmusch approaching RZA to do the Ghost Dog. Well, two actually. RZA did the sound. There's the soundtrack and then there's the score. There were two different releases for Ghost Dog because the soundtrack was like music. There was like Wu-Tang and there was the song with Cool G Rap and Ghostface.
Yep.
Cakes. Yeah, Cakes was the name of the song, which is fine. But for me, the Ghost Dog score is so great because it's one of the last. I guess it was before Supreme Clientele, but still, it's one of RZA's last moments of
Oh,
greatness. Which
oh,
it's been a while. It is what it is. The more
I'm
it's
so
funny because
happy that
it's.
you brought that up. I'm
I
so
mean,
happy.
it's true. It's true. It's funny because it's Wednesday night. So normally, if I wasn't doing this podcast, I'd be watching the Wu-Tang show right now. But I do. I think the more I read about, you read those Wu books and watch it. It's so clear now more than ever that the flood really just kind of threw everything off.
Sure,
The RZA basement flood, but
sure.
the Ghost Dog soundtrack, like he really experimented with a lot of different instruments but still that RZA thump, like those RZA drums were still there,
Yep.
just like unique sounds. I mean, that's yeah. Like I said, I think besides Supreme Clientele, the Ghost Dog score was like his last spurt of like just absolute greatness. I think whenever Ghostface, post Bulletproof Wallets does something, the RZA will be like, I'll give you one or two things. Same thing with the same thing with GZA. I think I think for the longest time the term classic in hip hop music, it doesn't mean the same, but I think masterpieces, there's still been plenty of masterpieces. I think Pro Tools is close to a masterpiece.
Wow, that's cool.
But like the Pretty Tony album and stuff like that. Like there's always Ghostface. I mean, RZA will always pull out one or two dope beats for Ghostface or GZA. Everyone else, not so much.
Okay, GZA's Pro Tools album is the first appearance of Ka.
No. No, it's the reappearance of Ka.
Right. No, the first of the new era.
Yeah,
of Ka.
yeah.
Right.
And Rock Marciano because Rock Marciano produced the Ka song.
Exactly.
It's funny.
Exactly.
All GZA did on that one, so he did the hook, but it's a Rock Marciano beat. Ka raps the whole thing, and then he just kind of like, and then Rock Marciano was on another song on that album. I think that's another kind of, yeah, exactly. That's such an interesting little piece of notoriety, is that it's out of nowhere. GZA pulls this dope album out of his ass, but then it's like, hey, Ka and Rock Marciano, it's almost like they're more associated with that album nowadays than GZA, because it's not, he hasn't really done anything.
GZA really has a moment. GZA has a real moment on there, because I am a philosophy major, right? So the GZA has a moment on there where that really fucked me up and like still lives in my head philosophically, right?
Well, he'll do that.
Yes, he will. This is a song called Paper Plate.
Yeah, his 50 Cent diss.
50 Cent diss. And it starts with this incredible interlude, K, where he's talking about, he's like, you motherfuckers talking all this shit. You're popular now. I just met a fan of mine in Germany with the W on his face, tattoo on his face. He's going to live with that symbol on his face for the rest of his life. And your music are paper plates.
Yeah.
People eat off them and throw them away.
But it's also a little, what's very slick about him saying that is after he kind of casually, it's almost like he didn't need to make the actual diss song, because he's like, when he talks about the Wu-Tang tattoo, he's like, and then he goes, I don't know, I've never seen anybody with a G Unit tattoo like that on their face. I'm not saying that there isn't, but I've never seen it. Like, it's just like, you could have just stopped it right there. It's like,
you won. You got this.
Because what's also that the actual song itself, GZA didn't go as hard. I think what GZA was trying to do was jab, because that song has a lot of, it's just nonstop jabs. I think he expected 50 Cent to return in song form, and I just don't think it ever came out. I think he had it ready to go. I think Jizza had an even harsher diss because from what I understand, everybody does that. Like Large Professor was explaining that there's another version of Ether that they were going to release, and then after Jay-Z did Super Ugly, Nas had another diss already in the can, like ready to go. But unfortunately, this was, Jizza and 50 Cent are different generations. Jizza is quite older than 50 Cent, so I don't think, because at the time this was 2008, so 50 was all over YouTube and Hot 97. Like 50 Cent dissed Wu-Tang back all the time, but it was never in song. Whenever he had an interview, he would just make fun of Staten Island, and I don't think Jizza, not that he should, Jizza didn't know how to handle it. He's like, oh, like I'm making him sound like an old man, but like in my day, we just made a diss song, but that 50 wasn't trying to do that.
Used to the circuit, so
that's how that's kind of it kind of fizzled. Well, it actually didn't fizzle out yet, but eventually, because Ghost and Ray had an even bigger beef with 50 Cent before Jizza, years before Jizza even got involved. So
they were not messing around with any of that. Yeah,
but it's funny. Speaking of that, I always, going back to what we're talking about, I always wished Rock Marciano would score a movie.
Oh, that's a good call.
Because his albums, the albums that he just, like the Stove God Cooks album or the Flea Lord album, they're like, it's almost like he's scoring. He's not doing beats. I think he would do a really good grimy like New York gangster film. You know what I mean?
Oh man, this is one of the best ideas we've had on the show, Ken.
I listen, man. It's funny, just going back to how people, we were talking about like J. Cole and people saying funny stuff about, it's like, I can't take you serious now. There was a great tweet that I read years ago about Rock Marciano that made me like him even more. It's like, Rock Marciano makes music. Oh, it's what's his name? Zach Fox, the comedian. Zach Fox. He's like, he said Rock Marciano makes music for people that stare out the window for an hour before they got to go shoot somebody. I was like, that is kind of
true. That's incredible.
Yeah.
No, I like that. So it's a great point, and the soundtracks are so important in that sense. If people commit to it, it can be on a different level. We talked about Juice. We talked about, we should talk about some of those. So one of the powerful things about soundtracks, when I talked about the Dead Presidents, is that they are a place where you can learn about music that you didn't know, right? Yeah. So one of my favorite, when I was thinking about what are my favorite soundtracks ever, The Harder They Come was on that list.
Oh yeah.
Because
that I think that's another example what I was saying earlier about like I don't think it's not that it eclipses the movie, because The Harder They Come literally was one of the, like, along with El Topo and Eraserhead, it was one of the 3 movies that like reinvigorated the Midnight movie. Yeah. I just think the score and the movie have their own separate cult followings, but it's like, but they're almost never associated with each other, even though the star of the damn movie does the sound. It's just so different. Like they're just such different worlds.
It's such a good entrance to Jimmy Cliff and to Toots and the Mayhals. And, if you've never heard Pressure Drop, like you're missing something from your life that you can get.
I got to shout out one of my best friends, who I grew up with his dad too, is his father, Michael Thelwell, wrote he novelized the movie Michael Thelwell. He's a famous collegiate professor and writer, but he wrote the novelization of The Harder They Come. So shout out to Mr. Thelwell.
The other one I was gonna say, just like, because we have to shout out these kind of, and I think it was popularized probably by Scorsese and him having these kind of songs floating through. What was like the Jump Into the Fire by Harry Nilsson, playing Goodfellas when he's on his cocaine binge.
Yeah.
But the Reservoir Dogs soundtrack.
Sure. Yeah.
Was really cool, because it was like part of the whole thing about the movie was that they're listening to this kind of pop radio station.
Yeah. Shout out to Stephen Wright, the radio disc jockey.
Yes. And so there's like Hooked on a Feeling by Blue Suede, and there's, just the Magic Carpet Rides in the mix.
Yeah.
It's just a real cool thing for you to be able to learn about maybe a period of music that, maybe it was before the Guardians of the Galaxy did that, but it was.
But still, yeah. Oh, Guardians of the Galaxy. Yeah, I forget about that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was the same
true.
70s AM radio kind of, mining that stuff.
Absolutely.
What was the song? What was the song that played while he cut the guy's ear off?
Oh, Stuck in the Middle.
Yeah, Stuck in the Middle was beautiful.
Yeah, Michael Matz. It's like that song now. If you're of a certain age and came out watching Reservoir Dogs, like you think of him doing those little like two-step as he's about to cut the guy's ear off.
Yep. No, it was. So those really became, and that was the weird thing was those songs became popular, but they became popular because they were stuck to a certain scene in a certain movie, and it totally it just re-identified the song in a completely different identity.
Well, listen, man, Tarantino's first 3 movies gave a lot of folks it's like a second life, like Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction, even what's it called, Jackie Brown. Like there was like this re-interest in the Delphonics. Because they're such an important role, throughout that movie. I always love it's such a. I wish there were more performances that got that like Robert Forster and Jackie Brown, just kind of like he doesn't raise his voice one time in that entire movie. You know what I mean? And he got nominated for this Academy Award, but it's such a great. I remember it growing up. I saw that in the theater a couple of times, and every single time, whether the theater was packed or only semi-crowded, when Samuel L. Jackson looks over, he's like, "I didn't know you liked the Delphonics." And Robert Forster's like, "Yeah, they're pretty good." Like the audience always laugh because it's such a no one has ever described the Delphonics and yeah, they're pretty good. It's such a dad kind of way of describing. Oh, I just discovered this new group, the Delphonics. It's very funny.
Yeah. No, it's Forrester was so dry and just beautifully dry, and that delivery, he was just such a unique presence in that way.
I'm one of those guys. I say, I mean, I don't care about the Oscars. I watch them because it's fun to watch, but every once in a while they'll nominate something random. It's like, oh, that's cool. Like when he got nominated, I thought that was really cool. Or when Bill Murray getting nominated for Lost in Translation, another role where he doesn't do the Bill Murray thing. You know what I'm saying? It's so stuff like that is always cool.
Very cool. No, So those are cool. The soundtracks that can explain things to you. I'm a bit of a vandal, Kay. I don't always play the music people want or expect me to play, so I tend to keep jarring soundtracks in my back pocket so that I can play them in the car and annoy my family. And I love these soundtracks. I just, it completely changes the tempo. So I have this massive greatest songs from Muppet movies soundtrack.
That's funny.
So and there's one on I made a soundtrack playlist for this. I sent it to you guys, but the one I put on there was Moving Right Along, which is just a really cool song.
Nice. That's funny. Speaking of playing soundtracks around at weird times, the most recent example is I love the soundtrack to the movie Upgrade.
Oh,
I love that. I love that movie also, but it's such a great electronic score by this guy Jed Palmer. So great. The movie's, speaking of, we talked about this a few times. That's another movie that got killed at the box office because it came out around the same time as Venom.
Yeah.
So it was just kind of, and it was weird because Venom. I don't liking things. Ironically, I think has just gotten so out of control these days.
Agreed.
But I think Venom is the perfect example of see what happens. Now we got a sequel because everybody jokingly hate watched it.
Pretended it was good, and now we got more of these fucking things. Yeah,
and he's coming back because that Venom is now in the MCU, so we're gonna get more of that. But for anyone listening, the soundtrack. It also people slept on it. So Lee Weinhall, who did he did Invisible Man and stuff like that. But Upgrade is such a good movie, and it sucks because actually there were talks of it for a second, but it faded out. The way, I'm not going to give anything, but the way that Upgrade ends, it's just like, yeah, okay, it's over, but without any kind of like force, there's a great sequel right there. Like the movie ends where it's like, oh, we could get such a great sequel, the showdown between, I don't want to give anything away for folks who have it, because I know a lot, because strangely enough, a lot of people haven't seen it, but it's a really fun movie. It feels like 45 minutes. The movie just the movie just breezes by. It's just, I mean, it's a fun popcorn movie. But but then the soundtrack, there's a lot of soul. I think a lot of times electronic music isn't really associated with soul, but like I'm a big Brian Eno guy. Not the Brian Eno, not when he sings so much, but when he does his ambient series and stuff like that, I can listen to that stuff forever. And I think in a weird kind of modernized way, the soundtrack to Upgrade reminds me of Brian Eno very, very much. So yeah, I can't recommend the movie and the soundtrack enough. I really can't.
That's a great, thank you for that. The other weird one that I always keep around me is the Broadway version of My Fair Lady.
Oh
wow. I just think those songs are just hilarious and fun. And it's just this whole movie about this dude, like, because I'm kind of fascinated. Old movies, one of the fun things about old movies is there was a whole set of like grumpy lead characters that hated women and hated men. And you were like, man, people were like, are you gay? And they're like, I don't like men either. You know, they were just kind of so grumpy they became asexual. And the whole movie is like Rex Harrison deciding whether he actually wants to date people or hate people. But it's got hilarious songs, good stuff. I always throw something in from there. The Willy Wonka 70s soundtrack.
Oh, I don't even, I mean, obviously I know the movie, but wow. I never said that, but that's something where like I gotta have the movie on to enjoy the music with that. But then I also feel like if I listened to it, I would visualize the movie. So I'm sure it would work both ways.
Yeah, if you put on Pure Imagination in the car out of nowhere, it changes things. It's an interesting. But recent ones, okay. I know a lot of people would talk about the Black Panther soundtrack because it had a lot of cool stuff on it. For me, Enter the Spider-Verse is the Holy Grail.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, that is a cool recent soundtrack. That is. Yeah.
Yeah. I was genuinely surprised by that soundtrack. Like, it was really smart, and it had just a lot of really good, like, hip-hop people, but like new school hip-hop people that were like actually cutting it, right? Yeah. So you had Amine, and you had, just all these cool Extension, and like Extension, it was really weird. Juice World, Coi Leray, people that are
wow.
Corday was on there, Denzel Curry, Vince Staples, like, yeah. I was like, who is doing this? And I think, wasn't it the guy? I don't know when did they put Ludwig in charge of that stuff?
I don't know if that was Ludwig, but I mean, he did. Let me see. I'm trying to look it up now.
The guy who produced for Childish Gambino, Ludwig.
Yeah, that was Ludwig. Yeah, he did. Wow,
he did it.
No, I know he did the Black Panther.
Yeah, he did Black Panther, but like there was a point where Marvel kind of just turned things over to Ludwig.
It's funny, in terms of like movie theater, I know that was like, I don't know, 4 years ago, but Spider-Verse is one of the last like great fun times I had at the movies too. It's such a like theater experience. I enjoyed it in theater more than Infinity War or Endgame, honestly.
Yeah,
easily.
Yeah. I'm with you. No, I'm with you. It's so yeah. To me, those are real cool deals, real soundtracks that I usually keep near me. Let me go over that list again. So, Reservoir Dogs, Juice, Willy Wonka, Friday soundtrack, Judgment Night, Dead Presidents 1 and 2, Spider-Verse, Muppets, My Fair Lady, The Harder They Come, Superfly soundtrack. Let me give you a strange one, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
This is really out there, but like I said, an old person. So I will grab the Blue Hawaii soundtrack and throw it in the car because it's so fucking funny and offensive and still good, you know? It's a 1961 movie, an Elvis movie, and it has one of his all-time best worst songs called Almost Always True to You. And the movie plays right as like his second girlfriend gets off the plane at the airport, you know, and
Nice.
he's explaining to her that you know, hey, I'm almost always true to you. It's got it still has like Can't Help Falling in Love with You. It still has some like important ones, but there's Rockahula Baby and a bunch of just dumb shit that is really funny. And the movie is not a bad time either. The Murder She Wrote lady is the villain, so that's hilarious. Angela, what was her name? She was awesome.
Thanks.
But she was in the Sinatra movie too. There.
Nice. I'll throw another random one out that I have to bring up is the Crow soundtrack.
Oh yeah.
Like, it's funny because there's like that's not typically a lot of the music that I listen to, but it's just like it was such a thing at the time. Like it's you know, and unfortunately for obviously it got a lot of notoriety for some not the best reasons because of Brandon Lee's death, but it was like, you know, and I remember at the time too, you know, like I was in the sports. I mean, I eventually quit football, but still I did track and field all the way through, and like to get pumped up before I throw shot put in discus, I would listen to the Pantera song. This was before I knew that those guys were who and what they are, but I didn't know at the time, but that song used to always get me pumped up.
Yeah, let's look at it. Yeah. Helmet is on that one. Pantera, Violent Femmes.
Of course, Stone Temple Pilots. They had like that the song that everybody, the main song from that. And that was a good chill song. I forgot who sang it. It Can't Rain All the Time. I forgot who sings that song, but I remember that was on the soundtrack. Yeah.
By the way, that Violent Femmes self-titled '83 album is one of the best rock albums of my lifetime.
Really? See, I don't know that stuff very much. I know who they are, but I don't know that album.
I love that album.
Okay.
Yeah, they've got that soundtrack has a great snapshot of like everything going on in rock at that time. That's pretty cool. Yeah. Get you up. That's good stuff. Kay, anything we didn't mention you want to throw?
You know what? My favorite, one of my favorites is La Liga de Gangsters. It's Piero Umiliani. He's like an Italian composer.
What was that?
And so he did, from what there was a track on the Ocean's 12 soundtrack that I really, Ocean's 12, the movie with George Clooney and Brad Pitt, that I like was one of my favorite songs. And then what I later found out that song was from originally on another soundtrack. So I went back and listened to the La Liga de Gangsters, and it was one of the best soundtracks like I've ever heard.
Oh, I'm writing it down right now.
Oh
yeah,
man.
it's really jazzy.
Damn. Now that you say that, I gotta because you mentioned Oceans, I gotta another great Soderbergh soundtrack was his adaptation of Solaris. With George Clooney. Cliff Martinez did the score. Well, Cliff Martinez has done a lot of stuff. He did the Traffic soundtrack. He's kind of a because he did the music for Sex Lies and Videotape. So he's a day one Soderbergh guy. But just in general, Cliff Martinez is like the soundtrack guy, man. He did music for Drive, did the music for Only God Forgives. His score for Traffic is great too. He just Cliff Martinez in general. He does great work, great film score work. But Solaris specifically, I mean, I'm not one of the things that as far as like in like movie folks know me, I'm a big Solaris defender. Not Tarkovsky Solaris. I mean Solaris 2002 that nobody likes except me. So yeah,
that's awesome. No, they got me thinking about like moments in movies that were musical, that kind of stopped me dead. And I was like, who is that?
yeah.
And I was thinking about Kill Bill Volume 1,
Mm.
the 5, 6, 7, 8s.
Oh, of course. That was like such a hit at that time.
Woohoo! That was,
Yeah.
we were like, what the fuck? This is awesome. And it really did have, I think the Cramps were in that one too. They played, Cramps had a song in that from the later years. It's got me into the Cramps later. But yeah, no, there were some soundtracks where you were like, wow. And to go back to our 50 Cent conversation, 50 Cent gets highlighted and featured on In Too Deep.
Oh my God, that's right.
In Too Deep, Omar Epps, LL Cool J. I saw it in the theater, Kay.
So did I. Yeah.
Yep. And if you look at that soundtrack, 50's on there twice, and one of the songs is How to Rob.
Yeah.
Oh.
Where he tells Missy Elliott to put the hot dog down so he can rob her.
Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, that is part of what initially sparked that like Wu-Tang beef, because they were Ghostface. I think it was Ghostface and Ray that he calls out in the How to Rob song. And like thinking about it, especially some of the egos, then it's just like, I know a lot of people like to think, oh, these rap guys, they're just industry plants, but some of those guys are really from the street. So it's like some guy you don't know, even if they're joking, it's like, hey, I'm gonna rob you. It's like, that's not funny to some people, you know what I mean? And I think that, and they took that, they're like, whoa, what do you mean you're gonna rob me? No, you're not. And then that kind of set off some, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, everybody was mad about that, and that's not a joke you want to hear.
Yeah.
But no, that was a good soundtrack. But it was very New York. It definitely had like a Redman, Method Man song. It definitely had Tear It Off. It definitely had that kind of stuff going on. EPMD probably. Maybe that was, or maybe it's what the one thing about. But yeah, EPMD had a lot of soundtrack stuff. They did some work back then.
It's funny, speaking of, since we're like throwing out Lucy's, like Soul in the Hole was another just great soundtrack. It had that Smith and Wesson song. One of Common's best songs ever. The Soul in the Hole, so with the Woo All Stars. High School High was another amazing sound. I mean, obviously Woo-Ware, but that Inspector Deck You God song and Street Life, the Semi-Automatic was such a great song. The De La Soul song, Tribe Called Quest. Damn, High School High had some, the Pete Rock Large Professor song is amazing too. Yeah, I still listen to High School High regularly. Yeah.
And I'm gonna go ahead and shout out, and this will be maybe the weirdest shout out we can have here. 2005, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy remake.
Oh wow.
The first musical number is So Long and Thanks for All the Fish.
Who's that? By who?
It's so the whole premise of the scene is that like the dolphins knew that the world was going to end before anyone else.
Right.
They just left. And so this song is the dolphins' tribute to us.
Okay.
And instead of saying so long and thanks for all the fish. It's awesome. It's this really kind of beautiful orchestral thing. It's a cool song. I guess you put that up. Yeah, but that was a great musical moment in that. Yeah. Any other musical moments we want to highlight here?
I mean, I throw out some other ones too. Like the Mo Money soundtrack is really, really great. Some good early 90s R&B. Boomerang is another good one. Oh, before I forget, the Strictly Business soundtrack, which is I don't know if I think that movie's very funny. It's a early Tommy Davidson, Halle Berry, Samuel Jackson.
Yep.
Although the star of the movie was what's his name? The if for you late period Cosby Show guys, the guy that played Lisa Bonet's husband, the guy who's in the Navy, him.
Yep.
I forgot his name. I'm sorry, but on that soundtrack is one of Grand Poobah's best songs. It's got the song called Fat Rat. And then one of Nice and Smooth's best songs is on that soundtrack. Nice and Smooth has a really funny cameo. They have a good cameo in that movie too. But yeah. Oh, Ellen Cleghorn, the SNL alum, she's in that. Yeah, Strictly Business is under. It's a I think outside of like the first Ninja Turtles movie, it's also one of Sam Rockwell's earliest roles.
Oh wow.
Yeah, Sam Rockwell. He plays Tommy Davidson's like sidekick, like buddy.
That's hilarious.
Movie. And look at him now. He's like outside of Samuel Jackson, he's like ended up being the biggest star in that whole movie. So
yeah, that's funny. No, that's cool. Yeah, we have the other thing I was going to ask. Okay, Omar Epps versus Lorenz Tate. Who you got?
Oh, I'm gonna go Lorenz Tate.
Same. That's my answer too.
It felt like Lorenz Tate was everywhere. You know what I mean? Like he was just like
it never aged.
Yes, it never aged, and he was like going from O-Dog to spoken word seduction and Love Jones. He just felt like he was everywhere. He was the guy. It's got it. Anything else before we go to recommendation corner?
Good. You guys put me on to a lot of things I got to check out now.
This has been awesome, people.
Yeah.
I appreciate this. So I'm going to go with. So this is where we just kind of share what stuff we've been into and looking for. I was going to say, holy smokes! I found this album called Co-Defendants. It's the band is called Co-Defendants, and this is the title of the album is This Is Crime Wave. And apparently it's Keshi, who is a great rapper and a great singer that has done rock stuff. And it's a guy from NoFX as well.
Wow.
And they have this band together. And track 3, like, features the DOC. And I was like,
whoa,
wait, is this somebody
way.
calling themselves a DOC? No, it's the actual DOC.
Wow.
Is featured with this dude from NoFX and Keshi. And Fast Ones is the song. Look it up on YouTube and check the video out. It's so fucking cool to hear the DOC rap again. And that album,
Nice.
bananas, 10 songs, no fat, just Kay, I always tell you about my wife's reaction to this stuff. I put the couple songs on, and she says, well, that's going to give me nightmares, but it warms my 90s heart.
Nice.
So that's kind of that's a perfect encapsulation of what's going on there. So that would be your good left field pick. If you're listening to too much hip hop and need something that spices it up a little bit, that's a good one. I don't know if I have told you about Every Last Word by Superstition. Okay, but
no,
dude, I've been rocking this thing. It's 6 songs. Superstition is so good. North Carolina, Atlanta area he's from. This is just a really cool project about the frustration of being a long-term indie rapper, where he's like, everybody sounds like Griselda, it's like,
oh, I saw there was some dialogue about his comments because he's like, hey, I like Griselda, but just it is what it is. Oh, I've been meaning to check that out. Wow, I'm glad you brought that up.
I think the bar is these dudes sound like they're reading Griselda teleprompter.
Yes, yes.
Awesome. No, it's a great project, and it's really cool and thoughtful and frustrated and honest.
Yeah.
And Superstition is a little bit underrated in that sense. think about just in the sense that there's a bunch of really artsy avant-garde artists who don't actually flow and hit pockets and create their choruses. And somebody like Superstition, sometimes I just want to hear him rap his face off.
Sure.
You know?
Sure.
So that's what I've been rocking. Yeah. Marcus, what you been listening to?
Well, not to be that guy, but I've been listening to a lot of albums that I've scratched on because I like to scratch on albums that I like.
Yep.
So yeah, like Squire's new instrumental album Transmissions, the new Spectacular Diagnostic album, of course, the album that just got released yesterday by Passport Rav and Blue Azul. I did the scratches on that.
I just listened to that today.
Oh yeah, I literally I start the whole album off. You hear that little Ghostface 83 scratches, which I didn't even know he was gonna use that. But
I love Blue Azul. Love
the new King Vision Ultra album. Like again, these are all folks who like I like their music, but outside of stuff that I have done the scratches on because I don't want to be that guy, but like the new AJ Suede album is really great. It's funny though, the whole album is great, but this one track on his new album called Mount Doom, I can listen to that song 10, 15 times in a row. Just that one song over and over. I think it's so great. Let's see, the new Sketch 185 is still on heavy rotation. And I gotta say right now in this whole like first quarter of rap, I gotta give it up to Sadhu Gold. He's just like on a tear recently. His kind of the little spook alias that he just released 2 separate albums of that, in the last few months. He produced this great album for Maze Overlay, which I think is a really kind of upcoming underrated artist. And he produced quite possibly another one of Makami's best songs, this song called Olajuwon on that latest Makami album. I think that's one of Makami's best song on the album, and just one of Makami's best songs. You know what I mean? So
by the way, to go back to Parthian Shots, Bill of Angel and AJ Suede, that last song is one of the best Rich Jones hooks of all time. Like Goodbye is just so Rich is kind of the king of underground hooks at this point right now.
Nice.
It's beautiful, and that song is absolutely bonkers. And shout
out to AJ Suede. I met him. He's another guy who I haven't scratched on any of his albums, but I've scratched on songs that he's on. There was a great out in Brooklyn. It was Shrapnel, Sketch 185, AJ Suede. Guys I've all done scratches for, and I got to meet them all in one place. I didn't even know AJ Suede was going to be here because he's not even like from this area. So it was nice that he was just kind of randomly there. So that was a really great
super
show where I get to meet folks.
Person.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Very cool. Look forward to the success.
And my mind is still blown that he was the model for the Hit Squad, or not Hit Squad. I'm sorry. What's the Def Squad? Baby, you know about that?
No, is that for real?
Yeah. So the logo, the little kid, from back in the day, that's AJ Suede.
He's the little kid.
Yeah.
Holy shit!
So it's like amazing that he's rapping now, and that's such a crazy story. It's so awesome. Yeah. He's
the Def Squad logo.
And you know what that's like? It's very similar to, if you're familiar with oh my God. Oh, Jamel Shabazz, the famous hip hop photographer.
Yeah.
So one of his famous photos, the 4 kids, there's like 2 kids below and the 2 kids doing the high five. One of those kids is AZ, right?
What?
Yeah, the kid on one of the kids standing doing the high five. One of those is AZ, and he went on to be this legendary hip hop MC.
Amazing. So, hip hop is a beautiful thing.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's wonderful. No, it's great.
Man.
Hey, what have you been bumping? What are you listening to?
Man, really, I've been really in the Beach Boys phase now. So I listened to
cool.
Pet Sounds, and then today I listened to the Smile Sessions, which is the Smile Sessions was the album that was supposed to be after Pet Sounds was going to be called Smile, but it just never got completed. So what they did is couple of years ago, they found like all of the outtakes, all of like not necessarily completed tracks, but tracks that were somewhat completed, and they put them all in one collection, and they released it.
Yeah, no, there's a combo album that was released. I think it was like so it's Pet Sounds came out in 66, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's the 65. They have a couple releases, right? And they bundle them together. One of them is Summer Days and Summer Nights.
Okay, yeah, that's the one I've got to. Okay.
And the reissue include there's a bunch of other ones, but like that, if you listen to those 3 albums from 65, Beach Boys Today is the other one.
Yes.
Party, you can start to like hear them revving up to Pet Sounds. You can start to hear things, the harmonies get a little more complicated and start to give themselves sad moments, and it's really interesting. Like you can feel the build to it in those albums, even though those albums are still safe. They're less safe than they were before.
Yeah, okay, I gotta check those out tomorrow then.
Yeah. No, the 2 are the Beach Boys. What is it? Today, yeah, Summer Days and Summer Nights, and Today. And yeah, those I think. Yeah, I have on a combo CD that, and I listen to those a lot. I listen to those a lot because I've heard Pet Sounds so much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's good times. Appreciate everybody. I can't wait.
Of course.
I can't wait for Alchemist and Larry June to drop.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, looking forward to that.
I feel like Larry June has become like an essence at this point. He's like beyond simply rapping, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like there was a song Big Sean was like doing like big Eminem flow energy on the song, like Palisades, California. And no one in the world was like, he killed Larry June on it. Nobody.
Sure.
Larry's great. Like he's just become this kind of relaxant for everyone. It's really cool.
I'm looking forward to this. It seems like Alchemist is dipping his toe back into rapping more and more. Yeah, like the last few times he's gotten some attention and notoriety, it's for rapping. So,
and we're gonna start having to talk about Alchemist's place all time.
If you're looking for a guest, I have some opinions on that. It's not in certain circles. It's like I'm defending him, and it's kind of like it's weird that I have to do that. But yeah, if you need someone else to, I've got a lot of thoughts on that.
A lot of times when you're dealing with beats, you're getting a suit off the rack, and the sleeves are a little bit long. They're to your knuckles or whatever. But with ALC will give you a custom suit,
Yeah, he will.
That fits perfectly. And these singles that Larry's been getting are just like exactly what he should have given Larry, and that's cool, man. That's Alchemist is so smart for being able to know where things go and who he's. It's just awesome. Yeah. Yep. But yeah, join the Patreon. Keep the flow moving. We got more cool stuff going. Meaningful collaborations all the way around.
What's new tomorrow?